I'm just a humble architect from Hong Kong. As you know, Hong Kong, it's in the news at the moment, and I think it's almost serendipity that I've had the luck to be invited here to share with you. Probably will become a parable for how we look at SDGs in terms of sustainable cities and communities. So my talk today is called The Catastrophe Through Housing Crisis in Hong Kong. And the story really starts with the image of Hong Kong being recognized for so long as one of the most successful and wealthy cities in the world. The world looks to Hong Kong as a model of development, as a model to how we all want to achieve in our urbanized world. In this kind of success of Hong Kong during the last 50 years of development, we have garnered a lot of accolades, one of which is that we have now categorically become the most expensive city in the world. And that sounds so wonderful because it seems like we have created wealth for everybody in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, that is far from the truth. And what I want to tell you about in this story today is that the urbanization and the growth in cities, which has been a real engine behind many of the issues that we are facing with the SDGs, is in fact a double-edged sword. And Hong Kong perhaps will become the first city in the world to show you some of those symptoms of the double-edged sword, the successes and the weaknesses. Hong Kong is famous for its high-rise buildings, its immense density, its incredible architecture. I, for one, as an architect, participate in building these cities. These buildings are expensive to build. They are incredibly well engineered, and it seems like we have built a great infrastructure for a city. But unfortunately, they've also become extremely expensive. We have seen some of the most astronomical property prices ever achieved on this planet to happen here in Hong Kong. Here, on average in Hong Kong, you have to pay in excess of $3,000 per square feet to buy property. And that is some 3 times as much as London, 5 times as much as Beijing, and probably magnitudes higher than here in Delhi. Now, the outcome of all of this urbanization and inflation means that for whatever dollar you hold in your pocket as a citizen of a city like Hong Kong, you can only afford less. And so the real estate developers in Hong Kong are forced to create extremely small products that people can ultimately afford. That results in what we call nano flats or nano apartments. Here, for example, is a real plan of one of these nano flats. They cost around $450,000, but they are only 150 square feet. In Hong Kong, a population of 6.5 million people with the highest foreign reserves in the world, we are having population of in excess of 250,000 people living in conditions like this. In this picture, you see an entire family of 3 to 4 sharing just one space. They sleep, they cook, they work, the children do their homework, they store their goods, they store their possessions, all in one space. Perhaps you expect this picture to be from some third world country. You don't expect it from Hong Kong. But this is the reality of what we have led ourselves to develop because we have believed in growth in an uncontrollable way. The cost of living and renting in some of these small spaces in Hong Kong are not cheap. What I showed you here in this picture, which is a small family of 3, they live in a bunk bed, the kitchen's right next to the bed, the fridge is right next to the bed, with no private bathroom. They have to share that in the common area. Costs in excess, sorry, this is actually wrong. This is $1,000 a month in rental on average in Hong Kong. And then for the older, the infirmed, in the aging populations that we're facing in urbanized areas around the world, they are forced to live in even worse conditions. In Hong Kong, we have a phenomenon called caged living. And caged living is effectively a bed space that people on the lower sectors of society rent as their home. They're called cages because we use netting around the beds so that they can keep their possessions safe. And they, on average in Hong Kong, and there's over 20,000 people in this category in Hong Kong, living at 250 US dollars a month in rental, US dollars. So what is the result of all of this development? When we believe only in growth, only in urbanization, only in the belief that creating wealth is the generator of a better world, is that we create a mathematics that eventually turn out to be impossible to balance. The younger people who live and work as they grow up harder to achieve their accomplishments lose hope when they cannot afford to live in such a system like Hong Kong. And so, in the last 6 months, I'm sure you have seen in the news, we have had absolutely unprecedented social unrest in Hong Kong. On one particular day, out of 6.5 million people living in Hong Kong, 2 million people came out on the streets. Now, their unhappiness is not only about housing, but housing is one of the key components, along with politics, along with education, along with health, etc., etc. But housing is a fundamental right, I believe, that everyone on this planet deserves to have. A decent, safe home. And a city like Hong Kong can no longer provide it for its people. SDGs, sustainability, is often predicated on a civilized society that can come together to achieve these goals. Unfortunately, we rely too much on the civilized part of society. Once we drop below the line, civilized society breaks down. And it can happen here in India. It can happen in China. It can even happen in Europe. We've seen it with the umbrella movement in France. So we have to be very, very careful. Anyway, moving forward to this story, I now put my hat on as the architect to tell you about how we are starting to try to think of some fast solutions to this. Building housing to deal with the housing crisis is an incredibly difficult and, in fact, very, very low intelligent way of doing it. Because building housing actually takes too long. It takes too long to deliver the quantity, and we need to find the land. So recently, I discussed with the Hong Kong government an idea to create transient housing, develop a new kind of architecture that is the cheapest in the world, fastest to build, easiest to move, to deploy on land that is left empty around the city. The kind of housing is called OPOD, and it can create a 150 square foot house, all in with all of its equipment and furniture, the structure, etc., for less than 15,000 US dollars. And this is the idea, that we use some of the available components around us and convert them, in this case, concrete water pipe. In China, we produce concrete water pipe in their millions. A lot of them are overproduced. Taking concrete water pipe, connecting them together, fitting them out, allows us to build incredibly fast housing at incredibly fast speeds, all with their own toilets, their own kitchens, and their own living areas, all built at exactly the same cost at around 15,000 US dollars. And with that development, we have gotten support from the Hong Kong government for a piece of land that we are now constructing as fast as possible, 150 units to house over 300 people in Hong Kong for a rental of less than about 200 US dollars a month, so that we can quickly bring some relief. It's a drop in the ocean, but it's a solution that I came here to Delhi, hopefully to share with you, to look to you as partners around the world, that if you have such problems with housing, if you want to use this solution, I'm here and my team is here to want to share this expertise with you, and hopefully you can take this back to your countries and to solve the problems that, of course, we are all facing. So I would like to end with a message from us in Hong Kong. Don't worry about us. We will survive. We are learning the bitter lessons of development which is unchecked. The SDGs gives us a platform for considering things. We must continue with wisdom and control, manage our growth. Only by doing so can we really rely on the civility of civil society. Thank you very, very much.